It go. Before we dive into this podcast, here's a short disclaimer. Healthiest Humans and this podcast series are separate from my professional work as a pharmacist. All views expressed here are for informational and educational purposes only. We do not provide medical or any other professional advice. If a listener has specific questions, we strongly recommend seeking professional advice before making any decisions based on the information provided. With that, welcome to the Healthiest Voice podcast. I'm your host and the founder of Healthiest Humans. Today, we're laying the foundation for this podcast series by briefly exploring the 7 pillars of human health. We also have a special guest, Bill Jolly, who is in the house, who is the founder of Interrupt Hunger, and he will have the privilege to share his journey with us in the second part of this podcast. This podcast will have 3 parts. In part 1, we will briefly explain the 7 pillars of Homer's health. In part 2, Jolly will share his journey and purpose. And in part 3, we will end with the 3 topic-related questions. The overarching objective for why we are here is to help people look and feel awesome. And this objective was born 5 years ago when I struggled with my own health challenges. So out of my own personal struggle, Healthiest Humans was born, and so our vision and mission came to be. Our vision is to design the best healthcare system in the world, which is the human body when it functions in its optimal state of being. Our mission is simple, is to empower humans. The one essential lesson that I've learned from the last 5 years is that if you want to change anything, there are 2 things that needs to change. You ought to change the environment, and you need to change the conditions in the environment. Think about a goldfish in a fish tank. You need to change the water, aka the environment, and the food and filter, aka the conditions in the environment. At this point, are there any questions, guys and girls? All right. All right. So, can I ask everyone to respond in the comment section with this one question? As a human being, what is your greatest asset? Let's look at that for a second. I want you guys to just pop it in there and let's see where we're at. I see life, connections, inspiring others. Love it. Love it.
He's teaching me.
I gotta find the comments, but I'm gonna say the body.
Your body, yeah. So my response is, I think our greatest asset is life, and in particular, our health. Because without that, we have really nothing. So it's just something to keep as a backdrop in the back of our minds, overarching the entire conversation. So let us talk for a second about the architecture of health. Looking at the current landscape of healthcare in the US, we have roughly a ratio of 95-5 cure versus prevention. In essence, there are 2 ends to the spectrum. On the one side, we have outsourcing of health. Did you know that the average doctor visit in the US is around 18 minutes? Some say it's 7 minutes per year, but let's say it's 18 minutes. Think about it. Only 18 minutes set aside for health. On the other side, we have insourcing of wellness. So what if we can turn this ratio around and leverage the other 500,000 plus minutes towards preventive care? So I'm advocating for a 95% upstream proactive prevention solution and a 5% downstream reactive professional care. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? Any questions on that one?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
On board with that.
Yeah. So let's look at the 7 pillars of home as health, also known as the 7 C's. Human beings are complex, and so is the environment in which we live. To make sense of it all, I think we ought to aim to try and control the controllables. And the one space and place where we feel actually comfortable to do that is home. So the 7 C's that we can control are our convictions, something I call faith as health, our connections, something I call family as health, our consumption, food as health, our conditioning, fitness as health, our careers, finances as health, our choices, freedom as health, and our cultivation, stress as health. With this brief context overview of the 7 C's of home as health, would you agree that you and everybody on the podcast, matter of fact, everybody in the United States, can control these 7 pillars? What do you guys think about that?
Definitely work towards them. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So all those 7 pillars actually play out in the 10 living spaces that we have. Those 10 living spaces is briefly the bedroom, the kitchen, the dining room, the living room, bathroom, office, gym, garage, basement, and the outdoors. So in a nutshell, we as Americans, think about it, spend roughly 90% of our time indoors and 70% of all that time at home, which roughly equals 15 to 17 hours per day at home. In summary, we have a captive audience in a space and in a place where we can actually control the controllable. So what if we can rethink and redesign every touch point in every one of these spaces as launch pads for human health, optimal human health? Let me close. I envision a future where every touch point in every home across America is designed to optimize human health, allowing us to control what we can, aligned with the 7 pillars of home as health. That's it in a nutshell. So let me turn it over to Jolly so we can hear Jolly's story, and then we kind of start building that into the conversation as a starting point. Jolly, it's over to you.
Hey, thanks, Christo. Appreciate it. Everyone on the call here, good to meet y'all. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hey, before I get started, real quick, you read your disclosure. I need to read mine real quick. I am an employee of AbbVie and are here on my own accord. My views and opinions are my own and not that of my employers. So with that, I'll do this fairly quickly, but hit the key points. So how we got here today. So I was in the Marine Corps Reserves, 91 to 97. I caught planes. I missed the first Desert Storm by literally 2 weeks, and I got out in 97 before anything else happened. So I just got to blow up stuff and catch planes and not have to get shot at. So when I got out in 97, as you might expect, I was in amazing shape, just amazing shape. But I did what a lot of service members do when they get out, and I got lazy and ate a ton of McDonald's and Dr. Pepper and just continued adding weight and getting unhealthier for the next 15 years. So fast forward to May of 2011, I'm 4 pounds away from having obesity. A buddy of mine, Coy, convinced me to train with him over the summer. This is May, for a September-October sprint triathlon. And if you don't know anything about triathlon, sprints, this is like the smallest baby of a triathlon, okay? And I remember telling him, I look back now, it's funny, but I'm like, Coy, I can't do a triathlon. He's like, shut up, you're a jarhead, you're gonna do this. And I'm gonna tell you, Coy, in that triathlon saved my life. And I mean that, and I'll tell you how it happened. Because as we start training, I'd swim 5 laps in the pool. And like 5 laps isn't a lot, even if you haven't been exercising, if you've been sedentary. I was so exhausted, I'd have to hold on to the side of the pool to catch my breath before I climbed out. I'm like, okay, I know I'm out of shape, but I shouldn't be this tired. And so I go to my doc, family medicine guy, and he's like, hey, you probably have exercise-induced asthma, adult onset asthma. Don't worry about it. Here's an albuterol inhaler. And I said, how do I know if I have this? He's like, well, if the albuterol works, you have it. If it doesn't, it's something else. And maybe 6 weeks later, Coy and I are doing a training break. So that means we're in the pool with a workout and immediately go into our run. And I had started developing something that felt like chest congestion. If you ever had walking pneumonia or something, like something's going on, but the chest scans are clear. And a mile into my run, I'm wheezing so bad, it literally sounds like a whistle. And Coy says, damn, Jolly, I didn't know you had asthma. Well, I've never had asthma a day in my life. And so I got home, I called my doc. I said, something's going on. I'm coming in tomorrow. One thing leads to another. He orders a CT scan, and I've got enlarged lymph nodes all over my body. The largest one right in the middle of my chest, 4.5 centimeters. It was a big honking lymph node pressing against my airway. And that sucker was what was causing the wheeze. So like, I think this is just such a God thing, and he's had his hand on my shoulder ever since then. But like, if Coy hadn't asked me to do the triathlon, if that lymph node hadn't been right there, like, I mean, who knows how long it would have gone. But I got diagnosed December 7th, 2011. December 7th, that's Pearl Harbor Day for y'all, which is fittingly to get diagnosed with something called chronic lymphocytic leukemia. It's a very slow-growing leukemia. There's something called acute myeloid leukemia, which is really, really bad and fast. Thankfully, this is very slow-growing. So if you catch it early enough, even back then, it was treatable. So that was a really good thing. If you wait too long, it can mutate and really bad things happen. And so because of the obstruction, the airway obstruction, I started traditional chemotherapy maybe like 5 or 6 weeks later. And so I started 6 rounds of chemotherapy in January 2012. And I got to tell you, one of the first profound things that happened to me, the first oncologist that Tracy and I talked to, he was way too old. He should have retired a long time before I saw him. We asked the obligatory, so doc, how long do I have? With no bedside manner whatsoever. He says, you have about 10 years to live. So the thing I didn't tell you at the time, I'm 53 now, but back then I was 39 years old. Kelsey was 14. Katie was 10. We didn't have Inslee yet. And so we just both went out to the truck and just bawled. Well, we quickly got a second opinion at a major academic institute, and they calmed our fears and said, hey, listen, you've got nothing to be pessimistic about. There's tons of money and research being pumped into new meds. We've got some chemotherapy for you now. When it comes back, there'll be other things you can take then. So don't worry. We got you. And so the traditional chemotherapy was all that was available. So it's 6 rounds every 28 days. You got 2 days. You're in an infusion chair. It was something like 6 hours the first day, 4 hours the next day. And so, not to be overly dramatic, but like that very first day in the infusion chair, I'm watching the IV drip, and I'm literally watching poison drip into my veins, like one tiny little drop at a time. And y'all, I was so down on myself. I remember thinking, like, why did I let myself get like this? Obviously, being sedentary, not exercising doesn't cause cancer, but it actually, if you are doing exercise and eating right, it absolutely helps your odds. And so what I quickly realized, though, it wasn't just me that I was thinking about. We had family members and we had family friends that had gone through a major health scare, and it gave them the motivation they needed to totally change their life and started adopting some healthy behaviors and turn things around. And so as those cycles went on, that's when the spark of Interrupt Hunger hit me. And I'm like, man, there's got to be something besides fear to drive us to motivate us to take better care of ourselves. And then one day it just hit me in the infusion chair. It's the most powerful force in the universe. It's love. It's what if we can use love and compassion for our fellow hungry neighbors to fuel our motivation to get healthy. And the stat that I held on to tightly, 73% of Americans have overweight or obesity. But at the same time, in the opposite end of the hunger spectrum, 12 to 13% of Americans today struggle with food insecurity, not knowing where their next meal may come from. So both struggle with hunger, just in different ways. And that's when the idea of Interrupt Hunger was born.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, question for you. Thanks for sharing. That's awesome story. You know, it's one of those. You know, what I found is over the years is that you have two types of people out there. You know, the ones that kind of still need to get a wake up call, and then the other ones is the ones that already had the wake up call. And my wake up call, just like yours, came 5 years ago. But my question is, thinking it from a home as health perspective, what did you do back in the days, Charlie, to actually change the environment and the conditions in the environment for you to actually overcome this challenge, right? So that's the first question. And then I can tie that in. What is one practical change that you can think of that we can actually learn from you to make in our homes to actually overcome the challenges? For you, it was a massive battle, cancer battle, but for some, it's just, you know, losing a few pounds, right?
Yeah, sure. So back in the day, I asked a new oncologist who was younger and an athlete himself, like, where could I turn to learn more about exercise and nutrition for cancer survivors? He didn't have an answer for me. And so I just started doing a lot of research because I was determined to do everything I can or could to be here as long as I could for Tracy and the girls.
Mhm.
And so I came across this beautiful field of medicine called exercise oncology. And, you know, it's not just cancer, but if you insert exercise anywhere along the continuum of chronic disease, you have dramatic improvements. Like, people who exercise get less chronic disease, including cancer. And then if you have it and you start exercising, eating right, and doing all these wonderful things we know about now, you have drastic improvements. And so I didn't know about this thing called lifestyle medicine at the time, but that's really starting to take hold now. And that's what I was gradually learning on my own over the probably, you know, for the next 13 years, because this past December was 13 years as a cancer survivor.
Mhm.
And so I was training already for that sprint triathlon that was in September, October. Well, I just kept training. You know, I couldn't train as hard, but in between those chemotherapy cycles, I was still training. And so when I got done in June of 2012, 5-6 months later, I was actually able to do the Marine Corps Marathon. And
Wow.
then after that, you know, there was a couple Olympic distance triathlons. I worked up to a half Ironman. I've done a couple of those, a couple mile swims. I've gotten into trail racing. April 23, I did my first ultra, and it's just a beautiful way to live. And so all along the way, I'm learning on my own about myself, how to get as healthy as I can. And I'm putting all that learning into Interrupt Hunger. And at first, my focus was only on weight loss. And then I realized that our bodies were not built to lose weight. Our biology, our physiology makes it almost impossible to lose weight on your own. So you got to create this environment. Like, if you want to change your life, you actually have to change your life. And that means changing the environment, changing your home, your workplace, you know, school, whatever, changing as many things as you can, one little tiny piece at a time. And with Interrupt Hunger, that's what we're focusing on now. And I'll finish this up really quick, and I'll give you I'll answer the second part of your question. So our new focus now on Interrupt Hunger, we want to help people live like our ancestors have for the last 12,000 years. What are the most basic behaviors we can do? So we want to teach people to cook. We want to teach them to garden. We want to make it easier to move. We want to make it easier to give back. And we want to inject community into each one of those. Because I already rattled off a couple stats, the overweight, obesity, the food insecurity, two other really important stats I hold on to. 8 out of 10 of the leading causes of death today are due to poor nutrition, which means that could be changed. And the other big one a lot of people aren't aware of, and we need to shout about this, the CDC says 30% of Americans feel socially isolated. And I've backed that up in my own daughter's campus in their own studies. So they're about 32% on college campuses. So let's tie all those together and help change environments. And the cool thing is we can do this at corporations, and we've started doing this at corporations, and we've started doing this in schools and school districts as well. And so you could certainly do this in your home. You could do this in churches. It's just how it's how humans were built to live.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Mike, Mark, do you guys have any questions for him on that topic?
I mean, I feel like we could talk for hours on this. I mean, I'm just like, I love like hearing this. And I mean, I think whether your story is you had a reason to change. I mean, we've all like, I'd say, you know, I probably had a terrible like eating habits in college, like everybody, right? You know, you went through those kind of iterations and you know, seeing some stuff through like just through my parent, like my mom had cancer in 2013, right? And just going like there's a better way. And I think that curiosity is like that's a word that always like with me to learn, like, okay, what am I eating? What am I putting? And then you start to realize like, oh, wait a minute. My wife and I like pre like 2020 said, hey, let's start eating better, like, you know, just more planning, more. And I think that just helped us to, you know, like just prepping meals, you know, now I'll, you know, smoke 25 pounds of chicken on the Traeger and cut it into pieces and like freeze it and you throw it in salads and just like having food that's when you have good food. And then every once in a while you get a wild hair and go out for like Mexican food and you're like, why did I do that? You know, because your body starts to get used to good food. And I used to like, and we still go out to, I mean, we're not perfect, right? We still go out to eat on occasion. But then I realized like when I eat at home, I know what's going in my body. I feel better just mentally about it and physically, right? So like, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, you know, those two people, you know, types of people that I talk about, I think the first thing is that awareness, you know, awareness of, hey, I got to change either by a wake-up call or a slow, gradual thing that I'm picking up weight, or I don't feel as, you know, well in the morning, or, you know, I feel fuzzy, I can't think clear enough. So for me, it was this whole metabolic syndrome where you wake up in the morning and you're like, you feel like you need to go to bed. You know, you just can't make it through the next 5 minutes after, you know, 2 or 3 cups of coffee. So I think my point is that I'm driving home is to your point, Mark, and it's that initial awareness of, hey, let me do something about this, right? And I think that's the challenge for us all. And I want to put that back in your court, Jolly. So when you go out into the community, how do you guys not only bring the awareness to them, the education piece, but make it stick? You know what I'm saying? It's one thing to get a group of people together for a bike ride or a walk in the park or a run or whatnot. How do you make it stick for those people? And I think that's, you know, one of the main things that people struggle that tries to do this type of thing. You know, what success stories can you share as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, so numbers are your friend, and I'm not talking about like macros or calories numbers. I'm talking about like people around you numbers. So that's why we have such a focus on community. Our mission is prevent chronic disease, feed the hungry, foster community, because it's insanely hard to do this on your own. You have the more people around you that are living healthy lifestyles, the easier it's going to be. Like if you have one person in a family of 4 or 5 trying to get healthy when the others aren't, you're going to fail. You really are. You're either going to fail or you're going to help pull them along, and they're going to get healthier. It's so much easier the more numbers you have. and I could go on a little bit. You want me to answer one of your previous questions too about like what you can do in the home, or do you want me to save that for a little bit?
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, so an important thing I've learned from some of the MDs and PhDs that live this day to day is it's so much more effective and easier to add things than to be restrictive. Okay, your body fights back when you're restrictive in calories and whatnot. So don't think about that at all. We want to be additive. And so think about your environment at home. One tiny little thing you can do is make healthy foods easier. And that means like seeing them. If you're just looking around, maybe you're not hungry. If you see something unhealthy, you're going to have a craving like that. Yeah. So if you have something healthy in a bowl on the kitchen island, have some fresh produce sitting out or some raw nuts. That's an easy win. Something you could do during the day, and then also vice versa, or the opposite of that is make the less nutritious things harder to see, or take them out of your house altogether. That's what we do. It makes it easier. And then also add one fruit and one vegetable a day. Like something simple like that, but it's like you could keep track of that mentally. You don't have to write it down. Like, hey, you finished the day. Did I have one? Did I have a fruit? Did I have a vegetable? Yes or no? And then, those are probably two of the like really easy things to start with. Yeah.
Awesome. So shifting gears from the home setting to the school and college setting. So what would you say can we or schools and colleges actually do better for students to kind of make this movement stick? You know what I'm saying? Another way to think about it is what can they add on, to your point? You know, what can they add on during a school day or a college day when the kids are at campus to not only educate, but educate on health, right? Something that I think is neglected right now. I mean, I have no idea what they're doing as far as that's concerned. Is that something that you see, and how do you think schools and colleges can tackle that?
Yeah, so we live in a little town called Boerne. It's an old German town in the beautiful hill country of Texas. We're 45 minutes outside of San Antonio, hour and a half from Austin. Town of about 23,000 people, 11,000 students. So I had the idea of trying all these cool people I was talking to, all these neat things I've been learning. Like, let's use Boerne as a test bed and try to make Boerne the healthiest small town in Texas. And so the key here, remember those numbers, and community is key. The more people you have, the faster the movement is going to build. And so what we're doing at schools, our girls are 27, 23, and 7. Little one's adopted. She's in first grade. And so we started there because that's where my wife volunteered. I knew a lot of the people there. We got approval by the school district to start something called a family fitness night. And basically what it is, this is like PE, but for families. And everybody loves it. It's so much fun. The cool thing about this one little step, you could do this at every single school in the entire country. All you need to do is be motivated and ask the principal, ask the coach, ask anybody you know. Like, hey, I got this idea. It's free. First of all, they love that. Second of all, it's super easy, and they're going to be supportive of it. So we started this in September. We got in front of the PTO. I talked to the school district. Every third Wednesday, 6 o'clock to 6:45, we have PE for families. We call it Family Fitness Night. We do it every single month except December and May, because those are busy months. And it's something we could start. The thing that you have to do to affect real change, though, is change policy and systematize things. You have to change the system. School districts are really, really good at that. So the end goal, every single student should graduate high school knowing how to cook, knowing how to garden, and knowing basics about nutrition. And every little step you make towards that is going to be a win. I met with some of our leadership this week, actually, and pitched the idea of gardening, hydroponic gardening, hydroponic systems, curriculum, and then the family fitness nights, and we're going to expand that. So I'm going to pitch that to, we've got something called a school Health Advisory Committee in April. And then so we get this approved and passed. We're going to start doing this in the next school year. And so
Yeah.
it's just one little step, and you'll see the spark. That's all it takes.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, for the sake of our time and our commitment to that, let's wrap it up with this one last question. So we talked a little bit about homes. We talked about schools. Now let's talk about the community. The community part. So, in your estimate and what you see and experience out there right now, what is the biggest health challenge facing our communities? Is it food insecurity? Is it the quality of the food? Is it lack of motivation? Is it, the list goes on, right? What do you think? What do you experience?
Yeah, I think the single biggest factor on our poor health, and that's our body and our mental health, is lack of connection. And it comes back to community again. And I harp on this all the time because I fully believe this. But when I say activate the entire community, the entire town, what we had in Birdie and what most places will have is you've got a lot of nonprofits and you've got a lot of people doing really neat things. They have really big hearts and they're trying to help in their one little area, but they're siloed and they don't know about all these other cool people and organizations that are doing really, really neat things.
Yeah.
And so what folks have started doing is bringing the nonprofits together, bringing the folks that are focused on food insecurity or health or whatever, bringing everybody together and say like, hey, this is what we do. What do you do? And the Chamber of Commerce is really a great place to start. I talked to the mayor, the city manager, all these different folks. The Chamber of Commerce hosts a luncheon once a month. They bring all the nonprofits together. And the last time I was there, I realized this one particular nonprofit was really pivotal in town. There was 5 other nonprofits that were partnering in some manner with this one particular nonprofit. So if I could say anything, like just like at the school, you start with one teacher, one principal, one coach. Start with one nonprofit and just get to know them. What do they do? And then the coolest thing happens, especially in a small town, but any community, you start seeing these people at the coffee shop. You start seeing them at the grocery store, and you're having coffee with somebody and 2 people walk by and they're like, oh, hey, do you know this person? You're like, no, what do you do? And you're like, oh my gosh, we could totally work together. Yeah. And that's when the magic happens. It's really cool.
I love that. And that's why I have this healthiest voice, because I'm trying to create a community for people that's like-minded, that feel isolated in their efforts, right? Basically, to your point, so if we can create a community where people can come, speak their voice, and bring it to the masses, I think that's an awesome way to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and don't try to do it on your own. Don't reinvent the wheel. Find somebody, especially when you're first starting out. Find somebody that's even remotely aligned with what your passions are, and go partner with them.
Yeah.
Just start. Make it easy.
So I want to throw it out to the rest of the guys here. Any further questions for Jolly here? Or for me, for that matter?
Yeah, I like the idea of being additive. I think that's a really good way to look at it. And I had an experience with that recently. I was down with my mom, who broke her knee, 83 years old, and I spent about 2.5 weeks living in her house. She was in the hospital, but what I noticed, I was looking in the mirror and it looked like I was losing weight. And I get home, and sure enough, I lost 15 pounds. And I was not watching my diet. What I was doing was moving.
Yeah.
And I was cleaning her house. I'd be at the hospital all day, clean the house, go for a walk in the morning just for stress purposes. But I was back home. I was going to all the old places and everything. And it occurred to me, I work in an office. So previously I had just said, I'm going to get up and I'm going to lift weights, or I'm going to get up, I'm going to go for a run, and I'm going to get home and I'm going to do this. And, sometimes you did and sometimes you didn't. But what I ended up coming to the conclusion was I was just inactive all day in the office. So what I've done now is I brought dumbbells into the office, and I got them right at my desk, and people come by and they do a set of shoulder presses or whatever, and I'm doing it too. And it's really been kind of like you said, an additional thing that has kind of resulted in a loss.
Yeah.
And there's other things going on. People are having a good time with it, and it's kind of funny, you know. And but for me, it turned kind of an office job into a little bit less sedentary.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, basically what you did is, Mike, you changed the environment,
Change the environment, right?
and the conditions in the environment,
Yeah.
right? So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
And the cool thing, I love that, Mike. But the really cool thing about that is you're not just affecting change in your own self. You're affecting your coworkers, which is
They're
that's
into it.
fantastic. Yeah,
They're
very
into it,
cool.
yeah.
Cool. Good
That's
stuff.
great.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, Jolly. Thank you so much for sharing your vision, your passion, your journey. I'm sure we will walk a long way, you know, along this journey. So thanks again, everybody. I appreciate your time this evening, and God bless you guys. All have a great
Yeah.
evening.
Thanks,
you.
Christo.
It's
Appreciate
been
y'all.
great meeting you, Christo.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
Keep it up, Christo. You're doing good work, man.
Thank
Yeah,
you, guys.
it's awesome.
Appreciate it.
I-
God bless you.